The alarm blared across the 12th floor of Hanseong Central Medical Center, a shrill, unforgiving sound that made every nurse and resident jump into action. Elena Brooks was already moving before the others even registered the code. Her sneakers hit the stairs with rapid precision, 2 at a time, each step echoing against the sterile walls. The elevator was slower, full of hesitant colleagues who fumbled with panic. She didn't need hesitation. She never had. At the scene, the VIP cardiac suite, chaos was already mounting. A man in his 50s writhed on the bed, lips swollen, hives spreading across his face, breaths coming shallow and fast. 2 nurses froze by the doorway, exchanging panicked looks, as if the correct course of action might vanish if they decided. Elena didn't wait for consensus. Epinephrine. No. Patient is in anaphylaxis. Activate emergency response. She barked, her voice sharp, controlled, carrying the authority that had once commanded surgical teams. The other nurses hesitated, but she stepped forward, assessing airway, pulse, and oxygen saturation in one fluid motion. Before anyone could react, the room's tension spiked. Dr. Park Jae-min stormed in, his crisp white coat swinging, eyes narrowing at Elena. What's happening here? Why is a nurse giving orders? Step aside. His tone was a blend of irritation and disbelief, the kind of arrogance that had been tolerated in this hospital for decades. I'm managing the emergency, Elena said evenly, never taking her eyes off the patient. We don't have time for protocol delays. Dr. Park's face reddened. Protocol is not a suggestion. I am the attending physician. Stand down. I am not standing down, she replied, her hand hovering over the epinephrine auto-injector. Patient is deteriorating by the second. Delaying treatment is lethal. The room's silence thickened, broken only by the patient's labored gasps. Dr. Park took a step forward, his voice rising. You can't administer medication without an order. This is a terminable offense. Elena's eyes hardened. Watch closely, doctor. Patient needs this. The auto-injector slid into the man's arm. Within seconds, color returned to his lips, breathing eased, and the hives began to recede. Dr. Park froze, mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. The nurses stared in awe, their panic replaced by incredulity. Brooks? The patient whispered hoarsely, voice trembling. It's you. Everyone in the room turned, shock rippling through their ranks. Elena's expression remained calm, but her heart had skipped a beat. Recognition. Someone who knew her true skill, her past. Mr. Kang? She asked, the name tasting familiar and bittersweet on her tongue. He nodded weakly. You saved my life once. I thought I'd never see you again. Flashback hit her like a tidal wave. 5 years ago, the coastal Philippine village, the tiny clinic with no neurosurgeon, no equipment, and a critically injured Korean traveler named Kang Min-ho. Hours spent stabilizing him, monitoring, adjusting, improvising. The risk had been astronomical. The patient had survived against all odds. But she had left medicine shortly after, burned out, exhausted, bitter at the world for letting systems collapse under bureaucracy and lack of support. Back in the present, the adrenaline of the emergency still thrummed in her veins. Dr. Park, recovering from his shock, glared at her, his face twisting with disbelief and suppressed fury. You administered medication without an order. Do you realize the consequences? Kang Min-ho waved him off weakly, still lying on the bed. Consequences? Doctor, she saved my life. Twice. Don't lecture me. Elena finally spoke to Dr. Park, her voice calm but slicing through his arrogance. I act for the patient. If protocol conflicts with life, I choose life. You can learn the difference or continue to embarrass yourself in front of your residents. Dr. Park's jaw clenched. You're fortunate I'm not calling security right now. You're not fortunate. You're irrelevant, Elena said softly, almost a whisper. But every resident in the room felt it like a thunderclap. The tension hung in the air, thick and palpable. Elena's gaze shifted to the residents, some wide-eyed, some slack-jawed. They had witnessed hierarchy challenged, ego humbled. They were silent, unsure whether to applaud or retreat. Minutes later, after Kang was stabilized and moved to ICU, Dr. Park stormed down the hall to the chairman's office, muttering apologies he didn't feel. Elena lingered, breathing deeply, letting herself relax for the first time that day. Her past, hidden behind a humble uniform, had collided with the present in the most dramatic way. Later that evening, she sat in the staff lounge, replaying the incident over and over in her mind. One of the young residents, a timid woman named So-yun, approached her quietly. Dr. Brooks? I didn't know. I mean, why didn't you say anything about your credentials? Elena looked up, eyes thoughtful, a wry smile forming. Because competence alone should speak for itself. I wanted to see if it would. It didn't? Not here. Soyun swallowed, nodding. I understand now. Flashback memories continued to haunt her in quiet moments. The Philippine clinic had been a crucible, a place of triumph and despair. She remembered the young nurse who fainted from exhaustion, the absence of essential equipment, and the hours she had kept Kang alive. The gratitude in his eyes had been worth the suffering, but the collapse of the system had left her disillusioned. That was why she had stepped back into nursing. A quieter life, fewer stakes, fewer politics, fewer compromises of conscience. But now here in Seoul, the past had collided with the present in a way she hadn't anticipated. Kang Min-ho had survived once, and now he was in a position of influence. She knew the weight of recognition could change everything. The next day, Kang requested a private meeting in his office. Elena entered, tense but composed. The room was modern, expansive, dominated by glass and steel. He gestured for her to sit. Elena, I need you to understand something. Myri Biomedical Group is hemorrhaging talent. People leave because of outdated hierarchies, toxic culture, bureaucracy. You know the system. You know what brilliance wasted feels like. Elena folded her hands in her lap. I left because I couldn't change it. I couldn't survive it without losing myself. He leaned forward. What if you didn't have to do it alone? What if you could have authority? Not just to save one life at a time, but to save thousands by fixing the system. Elena's brow furrowed. Authority? I don't know if I want that responsibility again. I'm tired. He smiled faintly. I know. But you have the chance to multiply impact. One life became hundreds of thousands. You can stop hiding. Her mind raced. The memories, the burnout, the fear of failing again, all collided with a sense of moral imperative. The question wasn't whether she could, but whether she would. Elena stepped outside the office, the city skyline sprawling in front of her, sunlight glinting off skyscrapers. Somewhere, deep in her chest, something that had been dormant stirred. She couldn't ignore it. Not anymore. And that's when her phone buzzed. A message from Kang Min-ho, foundation established in your honor. 52 clinics. 3,000 healthcare workers trained. 100,000 plus lives impacted. You've already changed the world once. Now imagine what you can do with leadership. Elena's fingers hovered over the screen. The weight of potential, responsibility and redemption pressed down on her. Fear mixed with resolve. Her reflection in the glass reminded her of the person she had been and the person she needed to become. Not a nurse hiding brilliance. Not a doctor worn down by bureaucracy. A leader. A force capable of reforming broken systems. 1 week later, she returned to Hanseong Central. The staff turned in surprise. Elena Brooks no longer wore scrubs but a professional tailored suit. Authority radiated from her posture. Dr. Park's eyes widened. Elena Brooks, Chief Medical Strategy Officer of Myri Biomedical Group, she announced. The nurse you mocked is now the Director of Clinical Excellence. We will reform culture, training and patient care standards, together. Dr. Park swallowed, muttered a shaky apology. She accepted it, but her gaze didn't soften. Apologies are words. Change is action. Remember that. The residents stared, all replacing shock. Elena had become a symbol, proof that talent suppressed by bias could, when unleashed, transform systems. Chairman Kang approached, his usual playful smile in place. Ready to fix 40 more hospitals? Elena's chest tightened with both fear and excitement. Terrified, she admitted. But I have to try. She had faced bias, burnout, and broken systems. She had saved lives against the odds. And now she would change the world from the top down, refusing to let talent go unrecognized. Her story was far from over. But for the first time in years she felt fully alive, fully herself, fully empowered. And if you want to see the next chapter of how Elena transforms not just one hospital, but an entire system, make sure to hit that like button, comment your thoughts below, and subscribe. You don't want to miss a single moment of her journey. Backhand index pointing up. Elena spent the next few days in quiet contemplation, walking the corridors of Hanseong Central without speaking to anyone beyond polite nods. Every corner reminded her of past underestimations, every glance from residents carried lingering doubt. But the message from Kang Min-ho and the knowledge of the foundation weighed heavier than fear. She could no longer hide. The day she officially assumed her new role, the hospital buzzed with whispers. Nurses and residents alike peeked from doorways, eyes widening at the professional attire, the confident gait, the aura of authority that Elena now carried. Dr. Park, his ego bruised, watched from the end of the hallway, jaw tight, hands fidgeting with his pen. Elena called a staff meeting immediately. "We're changing how this hospital functions," she announced. "Every nurse, every resident, every doctor will be accountable not just for protocol, but for patient outcomes. Bias, hierarchy, and ego will no longer dictate care." A murmur ran through the room. Dr. Park opened his mouth as if to protest but paused. Elena's eyes locked on his. "You will follow the new protocols or you will answer directly to me." "I'm not asking. I am telling." The room went silent. Even the most hesitant residents felt the shift, realizing that the woman they had underestimated was now the architect of the hospital's future. Later, she walked to the ICU, where the emergency had unfolded days earlier. The nurses who had hesitated before now looked at her with a mixture of respect and awe. One young nurse, Minji, asked softly, "Dr. Brooks, do you think we can really change things here?" Elena smiled faintly. "Yes, but only if we act together. Courage isn't about one person, it's about everyone refusing to accept failure as normal." As she passed the VIP suite, she caught sight of Kang Min-ho, observing quietly from behind the glass. He smiled subtly, his faith in her unwavering. She felt the weight of expectation but also the surge of purpose. That afternoon, Dr. Park approached, his voice cautious. "Elena, I wanted to apologize. I was wrong." She cut him off, her tone firm. "Apologies are words, doctor. Words without action are meaningless. I accept your acknowledgement, but I expect change. You will not allow bias or ego to compromise care again." His shoulders slumped, relief and embarrassment mingling. "I understand. I'll do better." Elena nodded and turned to leave, already planning the next wave of reforms in her mind. She would begin with emergency response protocols, ensuring that nurses could act decisively in critical situations. Then training programs for residents, emphasizing competence over hierarchy. Finally, cultural workshops to root out biases that had driven brilliant staff away. That evening she received another message from Kang. Foundation expanding. 60 clinics, 3,400 trained staff, over 120,000 lives impacted. Your leadership is the catalyst. Are you ready? She paused, thumb hovering over the reply button. Fear and doubt gnawed at her. Could she handle this scale? Could she survive bureaucracy, politics, and the constant scrutiny of colleagues? Then she remembered the Filipino clinic. The patient she had stabilized with nothing but knowledge, patience, and courage. She remembered Kang Min-ho lying in that clinic, trusting her with his life. And she remembered the thrill of making a difference against impossible odds. She typed a single word in response, yes. The following morning, Elena stood before a full assembly of hospital staff. Cameras and mobile phones recorded every word. Residents and nurses craned their necks to see the woman who had once been dismissed as just a nurse. "I am here to make sure no talent goes unrecognized, no patient goes unprotected, and no voice goes unheard," she declared. "We are reforming not to punish but to empower. Every one of you has a role in saving lives. Every action matters." Gasps rippled through the audience. Even the most cynical doctors felt the truth of her words resonate. The new culture was not theoretical, it was immediate, urgent, and unavoidable. Dr. Park swallowed, hands shaking slightly as Elena added, "The hospital you think you know is gone. Welcome to a place where expertise, courage, and integrity matter above all else. If you cannot embrace that, you will find the door." The meeting adjourned, leaving the staff buzzing with questions, ideas, and hope. Residents lingered, whispering about her past, about the missions, about the life-saving acts that had cemented her reputation internationally. Nurses approached her to ask for guidance, mentorship, and reassurance. And through it all, Elena maintained her calm, strategic, and commanding presence. Later, she returned to the office of Kang Min-ho. "Are you certain you're ready for this?" he asked, leaning back in his chair. "I am," she said firmly. "I've spent years hiding what I can do. Now I won't. Not for fear. Not for politics. Not for anyone who underestimates me." He smiled. "Good. Because the system needs someone like you. Someone who can change lives at scale, not just save one at a time." The next weeks were a whirlwind. Emergency protocols were rewritten, empowering nurses to act decisively without waiting for physician orders in life-threatening situations. Staff evaluations shifted from hierarchy-driven to patient-centered. Bias awareness workshops became mandatory. Resident training focused on skill, communication, and empathy over ego and rank. Slowly, resistance melted into acceptance as results became undeniable. One evening, as Elena reviewed reports of patient outcomes, she paused at a note from the VIP patient, the very one who had first recognized her. "You saved me twice. Now you're saving thousands." A rare smile touched her lips. The weight of leadership pressed upon her, but for the first time in years she felt alive, purposeful, and whole. She had stepped back into the arena, not as a timid nurse hiding brilliance, but as a leader shaping the future of healthcare. Dr. Park approached her quietly. "I never realized how much I was missing. You've changed everything." Elena studied him, noting sincerity in his eyes. "You can't change the system alone, but you can change yourself. And that's the first step. Never forget it." The hospital lights dimmed, the corridors emptying, but Elena's resolve burned brighter than ever. She thought of the foundation, the clinics, the thousands of lives touched. Fear still lingered, but it was tempered by purpose. Every choice mattered. Every action counted. And now she had the power to make each one matter on a scale she had never imagined. She took a deep breath, feeling the hum of the hospital around her, alive with possibility. The nurse they had underestimated was no longer hidden. She was the force they could not ignore, the leader who would redefine the system from the inside out. And if you've been inspired by Elena's journey, don't forget to like this video, leave a comment sharing your thoughts on leadership and courage, and subscribe so you can follow every step of her mission to change hospitals and lives forever. Her story was no longer about one patient, one crisis, or one moment of brilliance. It was about an entire system being transformed, and she had only just begun.